sorry, I forgot to touch on your tenants representation. So, or tenants' rights, right?
So tenant rights. So I don't represent tenants, but I will teach you about your rights as a tenant.
Okay.
Um, my organization, we don't help tenants based on non-payment of rent. But if you have a rent escrow issue or a breach of lease, we can possibly help. Um, but no, because there's so many places in the city that helps with tenant issues, we don't really do that. I don't really do that, but I can tell you that you have the right to notify your landlord of any issues you have going on in your apartment. If your landlord is in violation of the lease, you have every right to contact the court to start a rent escrow case and have them start investigating some of your issues. Like, definitely, on my affidavit judgment docket, I do see a lot of landlord tenant cases where I do see a lot of landlords taking advantage of just people's not knowing
Mm,
of what they can and cannot do in situations.
okay.
So,
What do you mean?
so for instance, I had a client not too long ago, maybe like 3 weeks ago. Her apartment, Christian, the ceiling caved in.
Oh wow.
She was being sued for like $10,000. It was ridiculous.
Because of the ceiling cave-in?
So it was like she didn't pay rent. It was damages for this, that, and the other. It was like a bunch of stuff added, and it was like, yeah, you owe us $10,000, and then that didn't even include the attorney fees. The attorney fees were like 3,000. So in total, the judgment would have been like $13,000.
Oh my God.
And so as I'm like talking to her, like I'm flipping through the file, and I'm like, yeah, they're saying you owe $13,000 because I just tell them outright what they are being sued for. And she said, okay, I agree. And that was like impossible because there's no way in the world, like, I don't believe that you did $13,000 worth of damage to this apartment unless you just completely trashed the place.
Right.
And then when I'm going through it, I'm flipping at the pictures. I'm like, there is mold in the apartment. Um, I'm literally looking at a rat's nest
Oh God.
in your closet. Like the pictures, I'm like looking at the remnants of all this stuff, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, that's what we were dealing with." So I left. Like, oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Um, I told them about it. They were like, "Yeah, we can't fix it," so I left. And I was like, while we were in the kitchen, the ceiling caved in, and I just thought it was because we lived on the bottom floor. I was like, no, your ceiling should never cave in with your upstairs neighbors like sewage. Like that should
Yeah.
never happen. And if it does, the landlord is fully responsible in repairing that and any damage it caused to your property.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So, and it's crazy. I mean, based on what you're saying, it seems like she was kind of just living with it. Like this is
yes,
just, um, I can tell you, and this is what breaks my heart. I help out with tenants a little bit as
yeah,
well. And actually, it's a friend of mine um, living in uh, kind of a similar situation. It wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. And the I mean, they had holes in their roof. I mean, directly, like you could go to their bathroom and look straight up into the sky. Like it
oh,
was it was bad. And it's something that she kind of lived with. She did occasionally complain, here and there to the property management company um, that the landlord had hired, uh, but they didn't do anything. You know.
yeah. So it's stuff like that. It's like you need to document your complaints because as soon as you leave and your lease is up, that landlord is going to come after you and be like, "You put holes in my ceiling,"
Mm.
and it's like, "No, the holes were there. You just didn't fix it." So a lot of times with my affidavit judgment docket, like this stuff you've been living with that you could have fully had rectified if you had known about it or you had like just contacted, you know, legal aid to start or the self help center could have given you information on how to rectify the situation before we got to the debt collection docket.
Yeah. Um, I I can't tell you how quick it was as a lawyer to fix that problem that I just told you about with the friend. I mean, all I did was find out who the landlord was, right? Send him a letter or her a letter, whoever it was, and just said, "Hey, if you don't fix these, we're going to file a lawsuit."
Yeah.
And I got a phone call, and it was a sweet couple, you know, older, whatever, and they lived out in the county. They had no idea. They just bought it as an investment home. They were scared, and I'm like, hire a better property manager.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my god, we didn't know. We're gonna get right on it, and they did. And that was during my first year as a lawyer, and I remember it's just like $1 is what it cost me for a piece of paper, and a stamp, 150, whatever. And it's just like this lady now has a proper roof over her head. And knowing that as a first year attorney, I was able to make that much of an impact through a letter. Imagine, I feel like we've got some heavy hitter attorneys, right, throughout Baltimore. We all know, right? And if they just like did a little bit, just to make this a better city and to help people, um, they could make a huge impact. I mean, there's so much good that can be done.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just getting involved with what's what's happening in the city. Like, I guess one, informing yourself of what's happening in the city, and then like, why is it this way?
Yeah.
Um, Again, huge history fan, so I believe like if you know the history, we're not going to repeat it. It's
Can I
like,
can I tell you something?
yeah.
The first time I had heard the term redlining, okay, the first time was in this offhand. I was a economics major in college,
Okay.
and I had just randomly taken an elective called like economies of cities or something. Right, it was just some easy A class that I was taking. That class blew my mind.
Hmm.
That's when I first heard redlining, and I'm telling you, like, I grew up in Montgomery County, like whatever.
Okay.
Like I don't know any of this, right? I'm Indian, you know, and I'm like, I didn't believe it. I'm like, no, this
This
definitely,
can't happen.
this is just like ridiculous stuff people are saying for political reasons or whatever.
Hmm.
And then you look into it, and it's like, holy crap, how much don't I know? And why aren't they teaching us this?
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, it's interesting because like when you look at like college, like you look at the different majors and you're like, oh wow, you all really don't, you
Yeah,
all focus on like the one thing you're learning. But yeah.
it's not even the one thing they're learning. It's also like, I mean, it's the one thing they're
Hmm.
learning, but also like a certain ideology
Yeah.
with that one thing they're learning, and it's like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.